good afternoon. How are you this, pretty sunny here, Friday, where I am today. We're looking at a gorgeous sunny afternoon, but I would much rather be inside talking to you about how you can go about keeping your family safe online. So my name's Christine and I shall be your Google Digital Garage trainer for this session. So what do you need to know? Well, first up, how did I get involved? Let's tell you, I'll start with me. So I've been involved in marketing since before it was digital. And then as the internet came along, I was very lucky that my career allowed me to take that turn into the digital world. However, what I did discover was, of course, with all the positive things that the internet brings, there's sometimes some areas where there could potentially be pitfalls as well. So it's really important to be able to keep especially our families, ourselves as well, but especially our families safe when we are online. So there's lots of things, lots of great reasons that we might want to be online. And we're going to try and have a really focused, positive look at those things today. But also, I think it's, especially those of us who do have any kind of caring responsibilities, it's on our shoulders to make sure we are keeping an eye on just making sure we're looking after our own and our friends' and families' safety. So alongside me today in that mission, I have the lovely Alison. Now, Alison is also one of our really experienced Google Digital Garage trainers, and she is going to be in the chat right now. She'll be chatting with you. She'll be answering any questions you might have. She'll be dropping some helpful links in, and she'll just be generally keeping everything on track and all together. If you want to speak to Alison, first up, she's there. She's called Alison. She has a little blue spanner next to her name. That shows that she's the one pretty much in charge of what's going on today. So if you want to speak to Alison, and I really hope you do, first thing is, housekeeping-wise, you're going to need to be signed in to a YouTube account. So sign in to that YouTube account, and you will be able to chat away freely with Alison. If you have any trouble viewing the webinar, best thing to do is just to refresh the page, a little bit of turn it off and turn it back on again. Seems to fix most IT issues. What I'm going to do is going to pause throughout the session where we will take a deeper look at some of those questions maybe from Alison. Alison will answer questions as we go. But if she thinks there's a question that it would be great for the whole group to hear the answer to, then she's going to send that over to me and I will be able to hopefully help just clarify the answers to that for you. And hopefully you'll be able to see if you need the captioning. If you hit down on the CC button, you'll be able to get the captions for today, if that helps you to access it a bit better. We will keep this session live on YouTube until about lunchtime tomorrow. So if you would like to rewatch any sessions, if you think, that's what I need to do, best thing to do, you could pause the stream, but then you'll lose the opportunity to chat along with Alison. As soon as you fall out of sync, you won't be able to chat with Alison. So I think the best thing to do is to jot down the time code on the areas that you're interested in. And then if you, anytime over the next 24 hours or so, you need to click on the link you used to get here in the first place, and you'll be able to fast forward and re-watch any of the sections that you would like to. Now, we're running this Google Digital Garage virtual training as part of our broader offering of courses. So if you would like to check out our schedule of upcoming webinar training, see the information on that in the description below. That'll link you through to our website where you can see the full range of things that we have to offer. Okay, that's all the housekeeping done. Let's have a little think about how we can go about keeping our families safe online. So I want to introduce to you our partner for today, because this session is being delivered in conjunction with Internet Matters. And Internet Matters are a non-for-profit organisation, and they have a simple purpose, which is to empower parents and carers to keep children safe in the digital world. So with Google's deep understanding of technology and Internet Matters expertise and focus to help guide parents through the many issues they can experience when using the internet, it made these two organisations natural partners to create and deliver this course. Now, just a little note on language. This session today is aimed at everyone and anyone who is interested in keeping the children that they care for safe. So when I say parents, and I will say parents quite a lot as shorthand, I guess, but I want this to be inclusive. So I want you to understand that by parents, I mean all carers, whether that's parents, grandparents, aunties, uncles, big sisters, big brothers, cousins, whoever it might be. It could be teachers. It could be leaders of sports groups, guides and scouts leaders, whatever it is that your involvement is with those children, and you have an idea that you want to keep them safe, then parents, when I remember parents and carers, is absolutely, this session is absolutely aimed at you. So today, I hopefully will be able to educate you a little bit about web safety and what that means for your family, so you can feel confident about your family being online while staying safe and secure. All right then, so how are we going to go about this? So if you've attended any of our Google Digital Garage sessions before, and do let Alison know if you have, you might notice this format. We always break them down, always, apart from one session actually, I think break them down into 3 learning objectives for you. So today we'll start with thinking about online safety. What do we mean by that? We'll have a think about the power of the internet. And then I'm going to start to get under the skin of some of those key areas of concern that parents do have. As we understand a little bit more about those areas, those risks, what we'll take a look at is things that you can do to combat specific risks that children face. Now, when we come to risk, just remember that these are just risks, these are potentials, and we're going to talk through a lot of quite horrid things in some ways today. I would say, I don't advise people watch this session with their own children present. I think it's some of the things we might discuss today will mean that, you might not want them to be aware of anything yet, because the risks that children face differ as they grow up. So different things at different times, I guess. But I'm going to hopefully be able to introduce you to some tools that will help you to proactively combat the risks. And also, I'm not here to tell you how to do your parenting, but I've got some tips for some really good conversation starters that will hopefully give you some food for thought that you can bring into your own family discussions as well. And it's really about opening up those lines of discussions. It's one, not every parent feels comfortable and confident with the technology themselves, which means that when it comes to talking about internet safety with children, we can sometimes, as older people, almost want to shut it down, almost want to say, no, it's too much. But what I want you to do is think about ways you can foster a really good open dialogue with your children about what they do online, to make sure if everything ever does happen, they know that they'll be safe if they come to you. So it's a bit of a jam-packed session. So let's start jumping in with that introduction to online safety for you. So here's the thinking, and I'd like to do this as we go through. I am going to pose some questions. Now, it's really important that you think about these questions for yourself, but if you do, once you've thought about it, maybe jot it down for yourself. If you have any thoughts about these questions, it would be amazing if you could pop some answers into the chat as well, just so in these sessions, we always learn as much from the peer-to-peer learning as we do from necessarily me telling you everything. So have a think. And for you, in your role, what are your biggest concerns when it comes to keeping your children, the children that you care for, safe online? Okay. As I say, pop them into the chat. There's no right or wrongs here. Your concerns are your concerns, and you're more than capable of having different concerns. But it would be really good, as I say, if you could pop some in the chat and share them with the group. One of the things I have been known to worry about is, especially over the last few years, just the sheer amount of screen time, and whether that's, we hear a lot about it not necessarily being always a positive thing. And also how to, as they grow, and well, put it this way, they're better at a lot of this stuff than us grown-ups are. So how do you keep up with them? How do you understand what's going on? As I say, do feel free to pop your answers into the chat. While you do that, other parents these are real quotes from real parents that were pulled from a recent focus group. And they demonstrate the kinds of issues that maybe you're also facing. You're not alone is kind of what we're trying to get to here. Lots of parents share the same sorts of worries, and lots of people are searching for help. So the first thing to realize is that you aren't alone in this, which is great in a way, because it just means that, if lots of people are asking the same kind of questions, then the answers will be there for you somewhere. So other parents, the real things, anything is, my children are more tech savvy than I am. Absolutely. And as I say, I work in the business. But definitely, if I ever wanted a mobile phone fixing, the first thing I would do is find a teenager to help me out with it. Okay. Safety is paramount. I get concerned with what they get up to when I'm not monitoring them. I get concerned of how to monitor them. I don't want them stumbling across things they shouldn't be stumbling across. We all have this desire, most of us have this desire to protect the children in our care from, the unknown, I guess. Because people can pretend to be anyone online. That's a really, I think, especially for younger children, that's a really difficult thing to explain, because they're not used to dealing with, a level of deceit. And it's not something we necessarily want to go into the reasons why people would want to do that. Lots of people feel that, this is the era of technology and kids don't play outside anymore, especially over the last few years that we've had. There's a real worry that people are inside too much. And that's grown-ups as well. But parents need to be more involved, engaged, and educated. Okay. We've got Danica on with us. This is one that I guess it probably fits in with this era of technology thing. But yeah, Danica's saying about Danica has a toddler, and toddlers are so fantastically good at learning to use technology. But with that flip side of that comes, do they have too much screen time? The good thing about screen time is it can be incredibly educational. So we'll talk about that sort of thing as we go through. Lots and lots of parents share the same sorts of worries, which is for me, it's a really heartening thing. So we're not alone. All right, so there are lots of concerns out there. This session, I'm going to hopefully offer you some tips on how to approach these positively. Now, the internet, one approach that some parents have tried to take is just to turn off the internet. We're just not going to have it. We'll restrict it, we'll limit it, we'll put the blockers on it. But you and I both know when we were young, we would find the way around any kind of too harsh restrictions. So it might not be the absolute best approach. And I think by having more tools in your armory than just full-on prohibition, then you'll be able to get some of those cool benefits from the internet as well. Because being online for most people in 2022 is part of everyday life. 4/5 of early teens, so 12 to 15-year-olds, 81% of them use a smartphone to go online. So these things over the last 5 or 6 years has absolutely infiltrated our lives. And yeah, our teenagers are using them. That era of 12 is a very interesting age, because when people start going off to high school, that seems to be, we've always let them leave the nest a little bit at that point. While they're in primary school, they keep them that bit closer. But, lots of people going off to high school, it is the rite of passage that they maybe get a device that they're allowed to actually take out of the house. I know, for instance, the schools here, you're not allowed to take into primary school a phone. And they're not allowed the phone in lessons at high school either. But going a little bit younger, looking at those 8 to 11-year-olds, those Key Stage 2, 2/3 of Key Stage 2 children are playing games online. All right. And there again, there's lots that they can benefit that they can get from that. You can work collaboratively. You can play against your friends when you're not in the same room at them. However, obviously, the flip side of that is you don't know who you're playing with all the time. And Danica, don't worry about your toddler screen time too much, maybe, because 3/4 of 5 to 7-year-olds are using a tablet, but they're using it to go online. So you're not alone with this. And I think for a lot of parents, the issue is, well, how old were you when you got this kind of technology? I said about 5 or 6 years for most people for smartphones. That puts me as a lot older than 12 to 15 using a smartphone. Because kids today, and I feel very old when I say it like that, but children, young people are being brought up knowing no other world than the digital world. Whereas for ourselves, we were fairly grown up before we had access to this kind of technology. And Dr. Linda Papadopoulos often talks about parents experiencing most things before their children do. So we teach people to cross the road. We teach our children to cross the road the same sort of way that we were taught to cross the road, because our parents taught us, we teach our children. With technology, we don't know how to teach our children because they actually know more than us in most cases, which is a really interesting dynamic. And a lot of parents struggle with it, which is perhaps why so many parents struggle with the thought of keeping the children safe online, because it's not somewhere where we have a vast experience. And things move quickly in our connected world. So as I say, there might be this worry that you're going to, I'm just going to limit tech, but actually tech can be an amazing force for good. For a start, homework. I do not know what I would do when asked a multitude of questions from dawn till dusk, especially with the toddlers, Danica, if I couldn't just Google the answer. There's a positive side to technology, and it's worth embracing and reinforcing the positive aspects. So access to a wealth of information for learning and for homework. Being able to do your own research, form your own opinions. There's lots of learning now that people don't even know they're learning. The alpha blocks, for example, and also now the number blocks for toddlers, they're not necessarily just playing games or watching screens. They're actually learning to read and count. Lots of games are developed to aid learning. And lots of primary schools especially will give app-based homework. So they'll give you there's tons of times tables games out there to get that level of practice in by utilizing the fact that our children love to play games. So having access to amazing structured resources that track their progress can be a fantastic way that our children can really, really learn. They can learn languages without having to leave their home. And they can access education that maybe in the past we would have had to find a teacher who could teach us this. Just spotted a comment coming in from Danica that a child at 3 years old is already more technologically savvy than we are. And it's because this is the world they've grown up with. There's something really important as well, especially as we get older. At some point in their life, most teenagers especially feel like they don't necessarily fit in, don't always belong. And when we were restricted by geography, by the people we could meet and influence and find, then it was maybe difficult to find that tribe, find people like you, find your own voice. Whereas because there is there are opportunities to connect in with people like you, to find role models, to have that freedom of expression, to find your own voice. You can champion causes. You can feel like you are making a difference in the world. These are really important things that young people can use the internet to do. So maybe that's starting a blog, building a website, following your favorite artists on Instagram. The internet can be a fantastic way for young people to connect with their people across the world who they're going to resonate with, but also aspiring young creatives can get started. You can start to build a portfolio. I know children building businesses before they've even left school. It really is a world of opportunity. But the internet remains a complex place. It was not built intentionally for children, and it's not as regulated as other children's services. So we need to think of tech as an enabler and keep a hold of the idea of the good that comes from it, but also we need to make sure we're using it responsibly. So we need a better understanding of how it can be used. So here's a question for you. What do your children actually do online? Have a think about it. I can see from Danica, their child's 3 years old, already knows how to use the phone and do online gaming that's suitable for her age, which is fantastic. But she's more techie than a parent. It's, it is a very common feeling, loss of control almost, that comes with not being one step ahead of the toddler. So think about what your children are actually doing. Are they gaming? Are they downloading things, watching things? Are they connecting with friends? Do you have a complete handle on what it is that they're doing? Do you feel that you'd like to monitor them more, have a better idea of what's going on? Because it's pretty clear that the children of today are growing up in a very different world to our generations. In terms of what they might be doing, we've got some statistics on that. Average daily screen time is over 3 hours a day. And digital technology is a fundamental part of our children's lives. So the average child, 11 to 16, high school child, posts 26 times a day on social media. Now, that's not just that posting their own photos, their own videos, their own thoughts. That also includes things like liking or sharing or commenting on other people's social media. But even so, and we think about when we say social media, we're thinking about TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, any of the platforms we think of as social media, but also don't forget YouTube's in there as well. So maybe commenting, liking a video, sharing a video. All this combined means that the average child in your early days of high school is posting on social media 26 times a day. The age for most social media accounts is 13. The minimum age to sign up for social media accounts is 13, and with good reason. You have to remember why 13 would be set as an age, because there isn't as much control over the content that they might stumble across on there. But 62% of children aged 11 and 12, so once they get into high school, those first couple of years, 62% of those children have a social media profile, despite not being old enough to do so. Okay. And a third of children play online against people they haven't met in person. So if your children are gaming, which there again, it's a perfectly valid pastime, but we just need to be aware of, who are they playing against and what influence could that be having on them and on their lives? Okay, I'm just going to check in with Alison. I can see that there's no specific questions she needs from me right now. To be honest, when you work with Alison, that's kind of what happens, because she can handle all of the questions that come in, but she will send me any over that she thinks would be great for the whole group to hear. Okie dokie. So let's carry on and have a think about ways you can, now we know what's going on there, let's think of some of those ways that you might want to keep your children safe online. So the first thing we're going to do is define a whole bunch of risks. And I don't want you to get scared, because then we're going to address your concerns, and we're really going to take a look at some practical things and useful tools to help you. But first up, let's have a look at those kind of key risks that we're going to tackle. We're going to cover each of these in turn. We'll give you a bit of context around the different areas that people are concerned about. I'll hopefully give you some tools that you'll be able to go away and use straight away. But really, one of the things I want you to think about is how to get the conversation started. And I want to make sure as well that you think that not all of these areas of concern are going to be of concern to every child at every point. What tends to happen is when they're very little, we probably worry more about how much time they're spending online. And then some of the older children will have a different mix of potential risks. And they are only potential risks, okay? So let's think about screen time first, all right? Now, screen time, anytime when the child is in front of any of their devices, it can really offer your children opportunities to learn new skills. But too much of it, like too much of a good thing, can have a potential negative effect on them. Well-being. And we're all aware of those pros and cons, really. But let's have a think about how we can address those concerns. So, too much screen time, those two little words again, too much, can impact your sleep. So sleep cycles are affected by blue light from screens, tricking our brains into thinking it's still daylight, which makes it more difficult for us to turn off and go to sleep. Okay. Especially, I think, when you see it with children, is a real strong effect on behavior potentially. So we're creatures of habit. And I know when we talk about this in a group with, adults as well, we recognize these behaviors in ourselves. We're creatures of habit. It doesn't take long, because what happens is I look at my phone, there's a message, oh, it's something interesting. It distracts me. There's a ping or something that entertains me for a little bit. My brain gets a little jolt of chemical and I put my phone down, and the next thing you know, I'm checking it again. The next thing you know, I'm checking it again. It doesn't take long to go to, get used to glancing at your smartphone 100, 150 times a day. You can actually see how many times you open up your own phone by using some of the tools built into the phone software itself. And it can impact our behavior if we get a little bit too reliant on that screen and that little easy buzz of entertainment, that easy jolt of brain chemicals, that actually when we take that away, we can feel a bit bereft without our messaging device, our little friend that we keep with us all the time. So it can have a detrimental effect when people don't know what to do and want to feel like they're doing it. And interestingly, on brain development, which of course is super important for our children, screen-based entertainment increases the central nervous system arousal. So our brains are on more. But that can amplify anxiety. We are more forgetful now because we outsource our brain to our calendars. I don't need to remember to do something. I'll just ask my phone to remind me to do it. When Columbia University found that when people know they'll be able to find information easily, they're less likely to form a memory of it. So we're actually changing the way we use our brain. And it's the old use it or lose it. If we don't train our brains to think, if we train our brains that they can just get the information easily, so why even bother remembering it, then, it's something that we might wish that we'd managed to develop our brains that bit firmer. So the lockdown situations that we've covered over the last few years, and habits are formed, and our human behavior, even though we're not technically in a lockdown situation anymore, human behaviors definitely have changed. We're working from home more. We are spending more time at home. It's taken a lot of people a long time to feel confident and comfortable to go out and do sports activities. Okay. But remember, not all screen time is created equally. A balanced digital diet is one that encourages creativity, encourages learning, and encourages connection with friends and family. And it's this idea of using the tools, using the internet with purpose. So in order to think about screen time, I want you to think about it as a balance. Researching for homework, getting involved in some class activities, using those times tables apps, all of those are really important. So it's about getting a healthy balance. Just banning it means you lose all that great benefits. In terms of screen time, one of the things that people can worry about with screen time is obviously the longer they're online, the more exposure there potentially is. So one thing that I would strongly suggest is setting up parental controls, because we're spending more time online, therefore, parentally wise, we should probably make sure we beef up those controls a little bit. But it's all about, giving yourself a little bit of a break and making sure you're not causing more arguments than you're fixing. So working together, children, especially over the last couple of years, have necessarily spent more time online. But looking to limit that, looking to set some screen time limits, and we've got some tools to help you to do so. So the first tool is a tool called the Google Family Link. Now, Google Family Link is a great tool that you can manage your family's devices from your own. So, for instance, you can use the Family Link to temporarily lock your child's device at different times of the day. So you might want to set a bedtime routine that locks your child's phone while they sleep. When mine were young, it was less about bedtime because they had a fairly strong bedtime routine. But actually, and we had a clear rule that the phones went off at least an hour before bed. That wasn't a problem. The problem was them getting up earlier and earlier and earlier in the morning to play on their device before we even got up. So what we used the bedtime routine was actually I locked the device until what I decided was an acceptable time in the morning, kind of 7:30 or something. And it wasn't allowed before school. So the device was locked until they got home from school. Then there was some time they were allowed it from home from school, and then it locks again before bed. For homework, for dinner, you can lock devices immediately using the Family Link app. So you can focus on other activities like your studying or spending time with the family. And I think it's worth there making sure that you put your phones away as well and model the behavior you want to see. If your child sees you more interested in your phone all the time than they are in you, then than you are in them, of course they're going to want to emulate that behavior. So it's worth checking what we're up to as well. So you might decide that the right amount of screen time for your child depends on what they're watching, what they're playing, what they're learning. So use Family Link's app activity reports to see which apps your child is using most. And then you'll be able to see. But you might decide you want a different approach. The carrot rather than the stick, I guess. So you can use apps that reward and encourage us to put our devices away. Apps like Forest that builds beautiful forests the longer you stay off your devices. And there's another one with Our Pact. It's free. It works on iPads and iPhones, and it turns on and off access to screens. And it's about building really good behavior, really good thoughts towards the devices. The more we practice putting our devices down, the better we get at it, and the more, in control we can feel. So the apps are really helpful in building good attitudes. But there are some ways. How do you actually go about broaching this with your children? Because, how much time the child spends on their device is up to you. But we have got ways we can set some limits. First of all, that idea of being the role model. What behaviour you want. If we put our phones away at meal times, then put your phone away at meal times. If you put your phone down when somebody's talking to you, it's one of my pet hates if I go into the room and people are glued to screens. And I was like, no, I'm talking to you, put your phone down. I make sure to give my full attention and model that behaviour I want to see. Alternative activities, read a book, and there again, model that. I have this unplug and play idea, get the whole family to commit to spending some time together. A board game or a jigsaw or going for a walk, getting out and about, whatever it is. Communal activities that you can do together and reconnect with each other away from the device is a really great idea. I think the key thing is to get buy-in from the children here, work together. I love doing this. I used to use this when we would decide on appropriate punishments for, or, sanctions if somebody did something naughty in the family, and the children would come up with far harsher punishments than I would ever have deemed, had thought to do. So working on it together, and, so what's the, how are you going to agree how much time you have? Well, and then working on together, stick it up. I like to have a family agreement up on the fridge that we have set times of day when we play with each other, communicate with each other, read a book, do something else, work on our homework, whatever it is. Agreeing on that appropriate length of time, getting them to think about the why behind it. Okay. And managing time in itself is very important, but really focusing on the type of activities that children are doing online are essential. Most experts suggest that we should focus more on what children are doing online rather than just a simple measure of how long they're online. So let's have a think. Inappropriate content. Sometimes your child may stumble upon unsuitable sites by accident. Maybe they've downloaded an app to their mobile device and then some ads appear in it and they click through and all of a sudden they're in a strange world. Links they've been sent by friends, chatting to other people online, even through like inter-device communication, Bluetooth or Apple's AirDrop can send links across. So I want to break that down. And as I say, different types of content will be perfectly fine at some ages and stages of child, and then a total worry at other stages. So kinds of things that people really worry about, and their exposure and reaction is going to depend on the age and the maturity level. But pornographic material, horrible sites encouraging unhelpful behaviours, crimes, racism, eating disorders, even suicide. These sites exist, and they are a worry for a lot of parents. They might unexpectedly stumble across images of violence or cruelty. And these aren't just necessarily sites with bad intent. Often, like, I know for a sensitive child, a younger child or a more sensitive child, some of the content put out by animal charities can be very, very upsetting. And it's designed to be upsetting to help us, to encourage us to donate to the charity. But we've got images of war or famines or, animal cruelty that are all going to be appropriate for an adult audience, but not so much for a younger audience. You might come across gambling sites, things promising, promising more than they can possibly deliver. Kids don't understand that if something's too good to be true, it probably isn't. I mean, adults fall foul of scams, let's face it. Unmoderated chat rooms and then content containing swearing, that isn't moderated. And it is one of the reasons this kind of risk is definitely why a lot of the social media sites have those age restrictions on them. Okay. And a child's curiosity is a really difficult one to manage. Delicate balance between protecting them from the risks and not scaring them not to go out there. But there are some programs out there that are helping to keep. So the best way to help is a family agreement. I think a really good place to start. And it's a great conversation starter. But you don't want to go into what will you see if you see something pornographic? Well, what does that mean? You don't want to go into explaining what some of these things are before the child's ready. What we would suggest would be thinking about giving your child some strategies on how to cope if they see anything upsetting. I think the language we've always used was, if at any point you ever see something that, makes you feel uncomfortable, or you're not happy with, or scares or worries you at all, it might happen. If it does, and then you come up with your plan together. Okay, so it might be that they, physically turn the tablet screen down on itself, lock the screen, turn it on its tummy, however they close it, and then go and find an adult who will get rid of it for them. That's a great way of feeling secure, that they don't even have to see it again to delete it, or see it again to close it down. So as soon as your child starts to use the internet, it's worth talking about these things, encouraging them to come and talk to you if at any point they see anything. And that's a real good, just that kind of catches all. If there's ever anything that you're not happy with, come and talk to us. We have a list of, adults who can help, that we make sure that if I'm not around, parents aren't around, they know who they can go to. Help your child to understand that clicking on pop-ups or links in unsolicited emails, links in messages that come in, anything that offers something too good to be true might end up them accessing content that they didn't intend to see. Teach them to ignore pop-ups, and make sure you're blocking pop-ups in the browser settings as well. And much more doable, I guess, with younger children, but supervise if you can, being in the same room as your child when they're online. Now, I know, and all of us do it, sometimes we just need 10 minutes peace while we get something done. But if you can be in the same room and just keep an eye on the child, just to see what kind of content they're accessing. I had an amazing, we always say celebrate the wins. I had an amazing experience where my child was it was during the lockdown, and they were on a Zoom meeting, a Zoom call with some of their friends. It was unmoderated because it was one of the children's birthday parties, I think. And at the end, she left the party because she didn't like the way some of the children were speaking to each other. She felt they were being a bit mean, and it wasn't kind. And she actually came and spoke. And I thought that was an amazing win for us. She hadn't liked what was going on, and she had taken herself out of that situation, which is everything I want them to feel empowered to do. Okay. Because as children get older, we still need we want to respect their privacy. We want them to understand that we trust them, we respect them, but we need to try and make sure that we are doing our bit as parents to keep them safe. The internet's a complex place. It was not built intentionally for children, and it's not that regulated. Some tools you can use, and the earlier you can do this, when the children are as young as possible. Danica, this is a great time if you're using smartphones or tablets while your child's still a toddler, trying to switch the parental controls on if they're not already. So with your devices, if you've bought a new device for your child, look up online how to you should be able to get a step-by-step guide on putting those parental controls in place. Apple have the screen time feature. Android has the well-being apps and areas that you can, control device by device what you can and can't see. It might be that your broadband provider can help. You can put filters on at your broadband level, which prevents or works to help prevent inappropriate content getting through. These can be controlled via an app. So you have the app on your device, and so you can even set different levels for different devices. A bit like, I know when we use the streaming services for the TV, when you sign in, you have to either sign into a grown-up account and put a PIN code in if you want to see anything that's beyond a PG in our house, requires that code to be put in. So you can set different levels for different devices, which can help you as well. Google also has a safe search feature, and when safe search is on, you can switch on it's the family-friendly filters, and that should help to block any content that's unsuitable for children. On YouTube, there's YouTube restricted mode, and there's also YouTube Kids. So YouTube Kids is a specialized video app. So lots of children are learning things on YouTube. YouTube Kids has specially curated content, parental controls, and filtering. YouTube Kids was the first Google product built from the ground up with kids and families in mind. And the YouTube Kids app offers a more contained YouTube experience for kids. So it lessens the risk of going off and just falling down the rabbit hole and finding all kinds of random stuff. The content is still generated by YouTube creators, but it uses the power of Google's systems to try to filter out content that might not be appropriate for them to see. So in terms of parental controls, you can head to internetmatters.org/parental controls and check out how to do these things. But smartphone wise, check this. Set the boundaries for your child before they get their first connected device if you can, because it's harder once they're up and running to then backfill with these controls. But if you haven't done that yet, work to try and get those on there. Make sure you're using parental controls on your home network if you find that appropriate. And also think about using safe search. Services like Facebook and YouTube, though, have a minimum age limit of 13 for a reason. Don't bow to pressure. Work with the other parents in the parents' WhatsApp group and the school. Make sure everyone's in agreement that, the rules are there for a really good reason. But I started to mention it a little bit about, no matter how old you are, bullying can make people feel helpless. And the internet and social media have changed the way children experience bullying. Bullying has always been around, but when you and I were children, the good thing about getting home, shutting the door, it would hopefully be a safe place where the bullies couldn't follow you. That isn't the case anymore. Bullying has changed as the digital world has changed. The digital world encourages more children to take to social media, but unfortunately also anonymous messaging apps, so they can share their experiences. It's a lot harder. Cyberbullying differs from traditional bullying, that it doesn't just take place outside the home. It can really come into the home because children are spending time online. They're on their phones, their tablets, their computers. It's often an extension, though, of face-to-face bullying, and it rarely happens in isolation. So there is a lot of difficult parenting stuff going on. It's hard to get away from. Young people can be bullied anywhere, anytime, whether they're at home, whether they're out and about. So in terms of what to look out for, when children are being bullied online, they quite often you'll notice a change in behavior rather than necessarily them being explicit about what's going on. Fact is, the more time children spend online, the more chance they have of having a negative experience at some point. About half of all cyberbullying comes from somebody who's known to the victim. And also bear in mind that the flip side of this is it's important to have the conversation because, and we'll talk about some forms of bullying actually in a moment. If you start noticing changes of behavior, either won't go near the devices, turning it off when you come near, seeming a bit nervous or jumpy, or obsessively checking them and being just not quite right in themselves, it's important to know that that this could be going on and how to start to have a conversation. 1 in 8 12 to 15-year-olds say that they have been bullied on social media. Reluctance to go to school can be part of it. Reluctance to take part in their social media, just changing and being not quite who they always were, losing some of their sparkle, I think is an interesting way to think of it. But there's lots of different forms of bullying. And what was really interesting when we've spoken to teenagers about these things, they don't necessarily see all of these behaviors as bullying, because for every for 1 in 8 children to have been bullied, it means there's a good chunk of children out there doing the bullying and maybe not even understanding what's going on. So harassment is targeting an individual or group with persistent offensive messages, which could develop into cyberstalking. Outing is publicly sharing personal, private, or embarrassing information or photos or videos about somebody online. Trolling is deliberately posting provocative and insulting messages about sensitive subjects or inflicting racism or misogyny on an individual, just battering them with these messages over and over again. Catfishing was stealing somebody's profile or setting up fake profiles to lure people into starting online relationships. Roasting is ganging up on an individual online and sending offensive abuse until the victim is seen to crack. So they chip away at them until they get the reaction, and they feed off that reaction. And then griefing is abusing and angering people through online gaming. Like every time they regenerate, running up to them and shooting them so they can't play the game. It was that kind of thing that people didn't necessarily think of as bullying. So these behaviors, it's worth talking about, being kind and looking after each other. And the good thing is, if your child is affected by cyberbullying, there are loads of places to go for help and advice. So in terms of few do's and don'ts, do find out what's going on. Try to establish facts around the incident and try to keep an open mind. Don't run in and try to fix it. Talk it through. If your child, as I say, at any point could be the one doing the bullying, trying to talk it through with them. Talk about the blurred line between uploading and sharing content because you think it's funny before it might get lots of likes, and think about that potential to cause hurt or offense. Teaching by example, making sure you're modeling and encouraging positive behavior, praise them when they do the right thing. And if it goes on, learn from it. Above all, help your child learn from what's happened. What could you do differently as a parent or as a family? And then talk about it. Share your learning with other parents and carers too. So don't get upset about it. Just try and stay calm. Easier said than done sometimes, but trying to stay calm when discussing with your child. Try to talk with other adults to work through the emotional side of it. Please don't ignore it. Take the situation seriously, whether they are perpetrator or victim. And don't blame somebody else. If they're the one doing it, make them face up to what it is that they're doing. Don't condone it. If your child was doing the bullying and says it was in retaliation, remind them that, two thongs don't make a right. And don't take away their devices, especially if they're the one being bullied. Taking away their devices, although you think, right, I'm just going to protect them from it, can actually make the situation worse. They might find other ways to get online, and they might feel like they're being punished twice. Because it's really important. You don't like to think of your own child that they could be the cyberbully themselves. But sometimes young people can be drawn into this kind of behavior without even realizing the consequence of their actions. Online grooming is a phrase used to describe people befriending children in order to take advantage of them for sexual purposes. It's a particularly tricky area to speak to your child about, but things to be on the lookout for. And there again, we're thinking about that behavior change again. Being secretive about who they're talking to online. These groomers will make them think they've got a boyfriend or a girlfriend. It's easy to pretend to be somebody else on the internet. Children can sometimes end up having conversation with people that they believe they're speaking to another child, and they don't know their real identity. Things to look out for is using, one of the hardest things about it is it can happen while you're there in the room, while you're there at home, and groomers may specifically warn children not to talk to anyone about it. They might even say that, they're not always strangers. Lots of situations, they might have met the family. So we're moving away from stranger danger here and into, unfortunately, they meet somebody, friend of a friend, etc., and then use the internet to build rapport on them. They don't realize, the children don't realize they've been groomed, and they think they've got a boyfriend or a girlfriend. It also depends on the child's age and maturity level, again, with everything else, but using sexual language, overly sexualized language that you wouldn't expect them to know is one of the key things that we'd suggest to look out for. And in terms of what you might notice, switching screens when you come near. It's very similar to the kind of cyberbullying way, in a way, that behaviour is, oh, the grown-up's coming, I close it down. Really important to know what to look out for and how to have a conversation about it. So you could think, I mean, a good conversation, it's a really tricky subject to talk about. If you feel uncomfortable doing so, a good way to say you've read a story about a situation where somebody met somebody who wasn't who they said they were. And have you experienced anything? Do you know anybody? Talk about the risks. The real thing here is, I think, depending on the age and stage of child, is making sure that the children know that not everyone online is who they say they are. And make sure they come to you if anyone they don't know asks to be friends with them. But bearing in mind, anybody new asks to be friends with them, and you have that conversation. Agree with some rules, never sharing personal information, never share pictures of their body online, and never mate up with anyone that they've met online. But stay engaged with them, from time to time, review the social media together, get them to show you something. You might want to become their friend online just to see if they're making sensible choices. But watch and observe rather than taking part, okay? One other thing that we would suggest is making sure that regularly you sit together and update your privacy settings. This is your privacy settings on your social media accounts. Any social media, use your social networks, use own privacy settings. Start dialogue with them early and teach them how to be safe online. There's lots of help from CEOP. If you have concerns about your child or someone else's child, contact CEOP, which is ceop.police.uk/safety centre. Obviously, there's also Childline and the Internet Watch Foundation are all there to do and help it. Okay, a little bit on privacy and identity fraud. It's something, we don't necessarily think of. We think of it more as something for adults, but children can be at risk of having their online identity stolen. So sorts of things to look out for. If they start getting inappropriate posts, bills and things that they haven't ordered, emails from organisations they don't recognise, or receive any letters regarding government benefits or tax payments that you would expect should be going, just wouldn't be the sort of thing a child will get, you might start to suspect that their identity might have been stolen. Things to talk about, making sure we're checking those privacy settings online, check the device settings. The great thing about all of this is a lot of the fixes work across the different risks. Find out what's already out there. Go into a search engine, put yourself in privacy mode or incognito mode and search for them. See what they've shared online. See what's out there, because, an oversharing of your personal details, your name and your address and your date of birth, and somebody has all of the tools they need to start on your identity. So you can start checking that out and then take action to take down anything that's there that shouldn't be. If the child's identity has already been stolen, be sure to tell any effective websites about the problem. Get your child to log in and change their passwords immediately. All right, see, there's no questions coming up, but just a little bit of things about we've talked about this all the way through. The key thing you can do is talk about online safety. Little and often. Don't bury your head in the sand about technology. It's not enough to say we don't do social media. We need to, it's our responsibility as parents and carers to learn about it. So open up and share too. My favourite thing, you create this safe space, get them to show you. Conversations about digital safety should be a two-way street. Talk about balance, talk about dangers and risks and what to do about it. Get them to show you how you can keep safe, because they're all great at this. And just to kind of follow it up, understand the risks, but remember they're risks, not harm. I don't want to tell you all these scary things so you just shut down the internet altogether. Keep those risks in proportion. Keep communication flowing. Put in place any tools and settings, depending on the age and stage of the child. And think about coping strategies that are going to foster resilience. Keep that conversation going. Lots of places to keep your child safe. We've got the Be Internet Legends. I'm going to show you that in a second. Google's Family Link, CEOP we've mentioned, internetmatters.org themselves have an amazing site, Internet Watch Foundation, and of course, Childline as well. In terms of Be Internet Legends, it's an educational program. It's a gamified that helps children in Key Stage 2, so the second half of primary school, teach them a really fun way about keeping safe online. You can move around Interland and face the challenges and, help your fellow internauts combat badly behaved hackers and bullies and phishers and oversharers, learn about the risks and learn to identify them. You can also mention it to school because they get head over to parentzone.org.uk, and as part of that, the school can get resources to work on interactive school assemblies and resources where they can learn this in school as well. All right, well, my time's up, so no more questions coming at you, I'm afraid. Next steps, pop into the chat, let Alison know if there's something you're going to take out of today and take forward into your life. Otherwise, huge thanks for you for joining us today. We've got a special survey link for you. I'm going to ask Alison to pop that in the chat because we're so keen to improve. If you head to goo.gl/ then that BixY6J, that directly as part of this program, a survey that will help us to improve the way we talk about internet safety and assess the impact of these kinds of programs. Other than thanks for you for joining. Thanks to Alison behind the scenes, who's kept everything running beautifully. My name's been Christine, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. We can't wait to welcome you back to another Google Digital Garage training session sometime soon. Thanks a lot.